The high priest for the new state religion in Canada is taking his job seriously, and he is combating it by going after climate blasphemers. Now, recently there was a ban on plastics, which was overturned by a federal high court, and it looks like they're going to be appealing this decision.
Can I get your reaction to the federal court's ruling on plastics, and will the federal government be appealing it?
So we intend to appeal.
So they intend to appeal. The plastic ban was ruled unreasonable and unconstitutional. Article here from Global News. The federal court just overturned Ottawa's single-use plastic ban, basically saying, what are you doing? You can't just ban these substances without actual reason. And actually saying that it was unreasonable and overturned it, actually overturned this ban. Now, Stephen Guilbeault is taken to the interwebs to give his point of view, making a statement here saying that they are going to appeal this and saying, well, an appeal to your emotions. Plastic pollution in many forms is choking our wildlife, clogging. Well, anyway, he said this out loud at this conference, and this is what he had to say. Of course, he added all the music to it as well. It's an emotional appeal.
Science, the body of scientific evidence showing the impacts on human health, on the environment of plastic pollution is undebatable. And the Canadian public has been asking us to do this. And we've seen municipalities across the country, we've seen provinces put in place legislation to reduce plastic pollution. I think Canadians are tired of seeing plastic pollution in their neighborhood, in our streets, in our environment, clogging our waterways, polluting our oceans. We've all seen those images of wildlife, whether it's seabirds, turtles, various forms of fish, whales caught or dying because of plastic pollution. This has to stop. And contrary to what Pierre Poilievre has said, we're not banning all plastics. It's ridiculous. There are thousands, there are tens of thousands of plastics items in our economy. We've banned 6 single-use plastics.
That's actually a really good point. He hasn't banned all plastics, and one of those is actually quite detrimental to the ecology. You guessed it, masks. Yes, masks are made up from mulched up plastic. We're talking about microplastics, and this is the big concern here. This is the appeal to your emotions. It's harming wildlife, it's harming humans' health. Well, it turns out that these masks are actually one of the biggest contributors to pollution and to microplastics in the environment.
Disposable face masks could be releasing chemical pollutants and nanoplastics into the environment, researchers have warned. Scientists said there needed to be better regulation and more research carried out. The Swansea University team found heavy metals and plastic fibers were released when throwaway masks were submerged in water. The researchers said the public health impact needed more investigation. Before the pandemic, we were looking at reducing the use of plastic straws, reducing packaging, but now we are looking at hundreds and thousands of these masks being disposed, said the project leader, Dr. Sarper Sarp, of the university's College of Engineering.
Right, so people in actual academia were concerned about straws, I guess, maybe paper or plastic bags, but now they're actually more concerned about masks. Here's another great video. It was by Jobber 2468. Has got almost no views, but I'll leave a link in the description for this video where he goes over actually a lot of the actual intricate details about how these masks break down and how they become detrimental to people's health. So if we're going to be going after some things and not others, why would that be the case? Now, again, a new study reveals the danger of inhaling microplastics. This is the issue, and this is by Global News.
Microplastics are those small, often toxic particles that are the result of degrading plastic or consumer products and even tire wear. There are growing concerns about what their impact could be on respiratory health, as the particles are now being found in people's airways. Many studies have demonstrated how microplastics make their way into our bodies through food and water. However, researchers say microplastics are even tiny enough to enter the bronchioles and get trapped in different parts of the airway branches. Some numbers show humans could be inhaling the equivalent of an entire credit card's worth of plastic within a week. Experts say the amount of microplastics around the world is on the rise. They are still working to understand the full impact.
So are we really fighting this if we're not getting rid of masks? Now, this is a really interesting thing. Now, a lot of the garbage that ends up in the oceans or in the waterways, it happens largely due to, well, you guessed it, poor waste management. Now, if you have a look at these images here, this is Marty up north on Twitter pointing out that one of these pictures is from Asia. The other is the most polluted river in Canada, and it happens to be in the province of Quebec, home of Minister Guilbeault. Canada's problem is not straws. So here's a lot of the pollution that's happening over in China and parts of Asia. This is what you see washing up on people's shores. This is what our waterways, this is the worst waterway in Canada. This is the most polluted one in Canada. So just have a look here. Now, Stephen Guilbeault wanted to point out that, what was it? Stephen Harper thought that climate change was a communist plot or a socialist plot, but he wants to assure people he's a proud socialist.
I was sitting. I'm a liberal and a proud socialist, Mr. Speaker, but this reminds me of a certain quote from Prime Minister Harper, who talked about the fight against climate change as a socialist plot. That's what the Conservative Party, and here it is, you have it again, Mr. Speaker. They do not believe that climate change is an issue. They do not believe we should do anything about it. They oppose electrification of transportation. They oppose deals like Volkswagen, Stellantis, and Nordvolt. They oppose wind development off the shores of Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker. They have no plan to fight climate change. They have no plan for the economy. They have no plan for the future of Canada.
I think it was the Liberals that actually opposed the tidal energy project, but hey, history will be spoken by the victor on this one, I guess. But I replied to this one. Why is it that every action from the government against climate change is to limit civil liberties or infringe on property rights? When the only fix for climate change they offer is socialism, it sure looks like a socialist plot. But hey, that's just me, perhaps. And what is this? Hey, check out top annual CO2 emitting countries in 2020. We were that little tiny sliver right there. Now, Stephen Guilbeault went over to China, which is one of the biggest contributors, the biggest contributor. Hey, look at that. And had nothing to say about their climate policies and their CO2 reduction, as well as the plastics in their waterways, as we can see right here. But hey, that's where we're at with that. Now, energy expert Alex Epstein on the absolute insanity of net zero. Let's have a listen to what he had to say here.
When human beings are productive, then we experience the world as abundant and safe. And the mistake people make is to think that's natural. So they think, oh, the world I'm in today, that's natural. And so all I'm worried about is doing new things like climate change to affect it adversely. What they don't realize is that it's unnaturally livable because of all the fossil fueled machines. And if they stop working or work less, then the whole world as we know it collapses. And this happens in any era, but in particular, an era where you have 8 billion people. Like the world does not naturally support 8 billion people. Like, you historically had hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah.
So it's really scary situation. And we're actually seeing it with like fertilizer prices and things, to take a fossil fueled world that is reliant on fossil fuels to be amazing and that 8 billion people depend on, and then to really try to defuel it and say, oh, I think this solar and wind will work. Like the recklessness there is the level of reckless. The people think it's reckless to increase the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere from 0.03% to 0.04%. That's not reckless. The world has had 15 times more CO2 and life thrived, and it might be a different world, but it's a livable world for sure. It is totally reckless and unprecedented to defuel a fossil fueled world that 8 billion people depend on without a replacement. And we're seeing a microcosm of that in Europe. We're seeing that with agriculture. And so it is an obviously dangerous experiment. And I want to stop that experiment now. I don't want to get toward what they want, which is let's eliminate all fossil fuels by 2050. And yet, even though we don't have any replacements now, we have some environmentalist organization told me we're going to have a replacement. So we should shut all the fossil fuels down and then hopefully something will replace it.
Nothing is going to replace it. That's actually the reality of this situation. And it's not just this one guy talking about this. Many, many people are out there talking about this. Alex Newman, award-winning journalist, says CO2 is not pollution. And we got to stop calling it that.
A lot of this environmental question depends on, I think, a very flawed fundamental presupposition. It depends on the idea that carbon dioxide is pollution. And I would argue, after interviewing hundreds of scientists, including many who've worked for the UN IPCC, many of the leading scientists in the world, that the notion that CO2 is pollution is absolutely preposterous. We exhale about 2 pounds of it every single day. The proportion of greenhouse gases made up of human CO2 emissions is a fraction of 1%. The idea that that is going to destroy the planet or change the temperature of the earth is, frankly, in my opinion, totally ludicrous. But from a totalitarian perspective, if you can convince people that CO2 is pollution, there's no human activity that doesn't result in CO2 emissions, including living, including dying, turning on a light switch. Every single aspect of your life, then, if we submit to the idea that CO2 is pollution, then comes under the regulatory control of the people who claim to be saving us from pollution. So when they do these environmental studies and they say, well, your CO2 footprint will be smaller if you eat bugs or you do this, that, or the other, you drive an electric car, that doesn't show anything about whether that's going to benefit the environment or not. In fact, CO2 has actually been very beneficial for the environment. In interviewing Trump's climate advisor, Dr. William Happer, a physics professor at Princeton University, he said the Earth is starving for more CO2. And since we've had a little bit of an increase in atmospheric CO2 over the last 100 years or so, plants have gotten much greener, agricultural yields have improved. So I think we need to also talk about the fundamental presupposition here. Is CO2 really pollution? If it's not, then all these alleged environmental benefits are completely fictional.
Well, it's become the new original sin in the climate religion. And this is where we're really at here. And again, more and more people coming out saying that this is not the case. American geologist Randall Carlson perfectly summarizes the human-induced climate change. I don't know if I can say that on this platform.
Climate right now is no warmer than it's been many times throughout history. Our baseline is now the lowest that carbon dioxide has been in 600 million years. 600 million. As far as temperature change, the IPCC's first report of 1992 showed that the medieval warm period was warmer than the present. Well, this didn't fit the narrative. So by the time the 1996 report came out, it was a completely contrived graph called the hockey stick. So what they did was they got rid of the medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age. And so instead of the graph doing this, they flattened it out and then they added instrumental record on the end that looks like it's going way up. The point is that the people that are calling them out on it are not getting the media coverage. You know, because look, at this point, there's billions of dollars going into the whole climate change narrative.
Absolutely. There's a lot of money going into it. A lot of people will accuse people like myself of being bought and paid for by big oil, but a lot of the funding comes from government for these studies into climate change. And guess what? If you're a scientist and you don't go with the narrative, you're going to lose all your funding. And that's typically the case. Now, this is Greenpeace founder and dropout, Patrick Moore, who talks about CO2 as well.
One of my missions is to turn on its head the idea that carbon dioxide is a pollutant and somehow dangerous, when in fact it is the most important nutrient for all life on Earth, and without it this would be a dead planet. So I say not only is carbon dioxide good, it is essential, and it's a good thing that we are putting some more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere because it was running low before we came along.
Well, that's a pretty bold statement there. Now, climate alarmists and people of the religion take to the streets, and they have been making a ruckus, inconveniencing people all over the place. Here is a scene where people were blocking the roadways in, I believe, this English town, and this man came out to basically give them what for.
What do you mean just stop oil? All your stuff is made out of oil, you idiot. Your clothes, these jackets, they're all made out of oil. What the hell are you doing here, making a nuisance of yourselves? It's a joke. What a joke. What are you doing here? Get out the road. You're wasting everybody's time and petrol. All these guys, their engines are running all the time, wasting more bloody oil, you nutters. What is this made out of? What are your clothes made out of? How did your clothes get here? They got here by oil. What are you doing? This makes no sense at all. Just stop oil. You haven't thought about this. If you want to stop oil, you need to stay at home and go and live in the forest.
So obviously not well thought out religion, but it is a religion and it comes with religious fervor. Here's another case from Sky News where these guys were trying to block oil tankers.
But we just got to stop it now because it's just only going to get so much worse.
Another group stopped tankers on a busy A road, infuriating drivers. One slows to talk, and activists climb on top.
And then you can be on your way in like maybe 2 hours.
2 hours? What are they achieving?
Well, what they're saying is they want maximum disruption to stop the government extracting oil and gas.
Yeah, but that's cooking oil.
That's cooking oil, he says. They're stopping cooking oil. That's how fervent they are in their newfound religion. Anyway, I'll leave that one at that. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. I'm sure there's going to be a climate warning on the bottom of this video for everybody out there to tell them that my narrative is not the correct narrative. But nonetheless, leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know about your religious experience with this newfound state religion. We've gotten rid of the old way of the separation of church and state, and now we have a state religion, and it's been spreading. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. We'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.